Hello once again everyone, and welcome to the set 12-13 combined set deck list for Ghosts. We got a lot of decks to go through, and I guess I'm starting with Ghosts here, but throughout the course of the next week or so, I would say I'm planning on trying to get about pretty much every deck out there as with a sample deck list and everything, so bear with me. I'm starting with Ghosts right now just because there's only a handful of new cards and it helps freshen up a more stagnant deck that hasn't had support in what feels like a couple sets. I mean, maybe it's had a little bit of support in set 11, but really ever since set 10 it really has not gotten anything special, and so I was able to kind of relatively quickly cook up a deck list that is probably at least a decent starting point. Speaking of deck lists, this deck list is not necessarily like a top meta deck, mainly because the archetype itself is just not super meta. It's hopefully a good starting point and a decent deck to start with, but there's probably some little bits of what's the word I'm looking for, techs and different off cards that you might be able to work with, but everyone kind of has a little bit of different play style, a little bit of a different budget, so I'm trying to make this, generally speaking, useful for the average person. So that'll be my kind of warning to everyone that this is not the be-all end-all deck list build, but this is kind of, I think, where I'm going to start, and then maybe branch off and, switch a few cards out here or there, but generally speaking, I think this isn't a bad start for Ghosts. So let's get to the deck list. Alright, so here's the deck list. We are starting off with 3 Soul Conversion, 3 Bakris Peppy Ghosty, 3 Noble Phantom, 3 Ghastly Banishment, 2 Arcus Spirited Manager, 3 Ghost Rider, 2 Last Daylight, 3 Ghost Maid, 3 Spirit Curator, 3 Liberty Unchained Wolf, 3 Phantom Howl, 3 Masquerade Ghost, 3 Sincere Soul, and 3 Colossal Grudge. In the Evo deck, we have 2 Bakris Peppy Ghosty, 3 Masquerade Ghosts, 1 Ghost Maid, 2 Liberty Unchained Wolf, and 2 Sincere Masquerade Ghost. So, like usual, the whole point of Ghosts is to eventually get Masquerade Ghost out, get them in your EX area, play Sincere Soul to play Sincere Masquerade Ghost, and then by that point you should have enough play points within a turn to have some combination of Masquerade Ghost and then either something like Ghost Rider or Arcus Spirited Manager or Ghost Maid or something to that kin, or Phantom Howl, that you can keep summoning ghosts to attack the opponent with Storm and do decent damage, and then at the end of the turn when the ghosts die, you can, with Masquerade Ghost effect, summon Gargantuan Ghost to defend yourself during your opponent's turn, and rinse and repeat every turn until you eventually defeat your opponent. By this point, if you're familiar enough with Ghosts, you're probably all set to start deck building and at least have this be a decent inspiration, but if you're kind of on the newer side with Ghosts or the game in general, the rest of this video is going to be me reviewing each card and just kind of explaining what the purpose of them are. So let's go to Soul Conversion and start with that. Soul Conversion is a 1-cost quick spell that says you can select a follower on your field, destroy it, and draw 2 cards. This card is pretty much a solid 3 in the deck because you summon so many ghosts that will die at the end of the turn anyways, and ghosts only cost 1 if you even play a cost for it at all, that you just run 3 Soul Conversions to just keep refilling your hand and keep getting more advantage to keep pushing your opponent. Not much else to say for it. It's short, simple, and to the point, so let's get to the next one. Up next is the ever-trusty Bakris Peppy Ghosty. He's a 1-cost 1/1 with Fanfare. If there is a Gargantuan Ghost on your field, draw a card, and his name is also Ghost, which I won't get into, but is relevant for later, and he evolves for 1 into a 2/2, and he still retains the name Ghost, and last words, you can put him into the EX area. There's a lot of cards in this deck list that want cards with the word Ghost in the EX area, and if you do have them in your EX area, you tend to get additional benefits for having them. So this helps get that there relatively early into the game. Early on, you won't be triggering the Fanfare effect at all, but more mid or late game, that will come in more into effect with being able to summon Gargantuan Ghost between Sincere Masquerade Ghost and regular Masquerade Ghost. Up next is Noble Phantom. He's a 1-cost 2/2 that on Fanfare, if there's a follower with Ghost in its name in your EX area, you get to draw a card. So good example of this is with Bakris Peppy Ghosty. If you played him and he goes into the EX area because you evolved him and his last words trigger, so he'd go into the EX area, and then you play Noble Phantom next turn, then you get to draw a card and get more advantage. And he's also a goblin, which there's not a lot of goblins in Abysscraft. I think this is actually kind of the first quote-unquote free goblin, where prior to Noble Phantom. If you wanted a goblin, you either had to deal yourself 1 damage with Silverbolt Hunter or mill a card with Black Mage Karen. So this is kind of the first free goblin, one cost 2/2 that can be kind of splashed into any deck with no downside. Granted, in any other deck, the fanfare won't trigger, and goblins in general are just not good anymore, but just figured mention that anyways. Up next is a new card, Ghastly Banishment. It's a 1-cost spell that says you put 2 ghost tokens into your EX area and they cost 1 less to play this turn, so you get 2 play points worth of value for paying 1 play point. But I'm sure sometimes you're probably not going to play both ghosts on the same turn because a lot of cards want a ghost in the EX area to get additional benefits. But overall, this is a very solid card for consistency and getting ghosts into your EX area. Sometimes it felt a little feast or famine with getting ghosts in the EX area previous to this set, but this should help smooth that out much better. Next up is Arcus Spirited Manager. It's a 2-cost 5/5, which is quite overstated. However, it can't attack enemies, and at the start of your main phase, you can Necrocharge 10, summon a ghost token, and it has an act ability where you can bury another follower and choose one of the following, and you can only activate it once per turn. You can either draw a card, summon 2 more ghost tokens, or bury the top 2 cards of your deck. Generally speaking, Arcus is more of a late game card because you're not going to have the Necrocharge 10 early on, and ghosts don't really mill much anyway, so the Necrocharge 10 almost tends to not even happen. And otherwise, you kind of want to play them just to kind of get a couple more ghosts on the board. You could always sack another ghost that was already on the board with something like Ghastly Banishment to get 2 more ghosts. And if you have something like Masquerade Ghost on the board, then sacrificing that 1 ghost will get you a Gargantuan Ghost. So overall, he's not a bad card, but I just run him at 2 in this deck because it's more of a late game card, so you really don't want to see him early game anyways. And with all the draw you have with Soul Conversion and a few other cards that kind of help you get through your deck more, and just the natural draw of your turns, you should get him more in the late game where you want to more ideally see him. Ghost Rider is up next. It's a 2-cost 2/3 follower that says whenever a follower on your field evolves, summon 2 ghost tokens, and it has an act ability where you can engage the Ghost Rider and select a ghost on your field and give it Bane. Ghost Rider, generally speaking, is more of a late game card. However, I run her at 3 because you can have weird turns where you summon Bakris Peppy Ghosty and summon Ghost Rider and then pay 1 play point or evo point, depending on the situation, to evolve Bakris Peppy Ghosty and get 2 ghosts off of Ghost Rider. Or you could use other cards too, like Ghost Maid, to get a couple more ghosts on the board. A couple options like that work, but mainly you're meant to play her with Masquerade Ghost. Next up is Last Daylight. It's a 2-cost spell that says you can select an enemy follower on the field, deal 3 damage, and give 1 attack to each follower that costs 1 or less on your field. And I also have a alternate printed version of Last Daylight called Sweet Sentiments. As you can tell with the name being right above Sweet Sentiments, it's the exact same card. You can even read it there. It's the exact same card. But between the 2 different versions, you can only run up to 3 copies. So you could have all 3 Last Daylights and no Sweet Sentiments, or 1 of Last Daylight and 2 of Sweet Sentiments, or the inverse of 2 Sweet Sentiments and 1 Last Daylight, or all 3 copies of Sweet Sentiments. But it's just a total of 3 between both copies, so keep that in mind. But otherwise, the reason why this is run is because all your ghosts are 1-cost followers, so they also would get the +1 attack, and they have Storm, so you can just hit your opponent for face. It's a really solid card that can potentially amplify your damage real quick. Like if you play Masquerade Ghost and Phantom Howl to get 4 ghosts, I mean that would be normally 4 damage, but then if you played Sweet Sentiments to deal 3 damage to an enemy follower, which might even destroy a ward so you can punch face easier, then that literally like doubles your damage output from 4 damage to 8. So the damage output on this can get real crazy, especially if you play 2 in a row. Next up is Ghost Mage. She's a 2-cost 2/2 that on Fanfare you can summon a ghost token. She evolves for 1, and on evolve you can put a ghost token into your EX area and bury the top card of your deck to help with your Necrocharge. The point of this card is mainly just to get the ghost token that she summons on Fanfare, but she also helps the consistency of getting ghosts in the EX area. And you only tend to run 1 Evo of her, because once you get the ghost in the EX area, that's all you really need the Evo for. You don't really care about the mill, even though the mill is kind of nice to a certain degree, but it's nothing to really rely on. So the Ghost Maid is ultimately meant for her base form. Next is Spirit Curator. It's a 2-cost 2/3 follower that on Fanfare you can choose one out of 2 effects. You can either 1, put a ghost token into your EX area, or 2, if there's already a ghost with in its name in the EX area, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal an Abysscraft card from among them and add it to your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. Even now, prior to all the support, I don't think I've honestly ever done the first effect of putting a ghost token in the EX area. I've been able to still get ghosts pretty easily in the EX area, so most of the time you want to do the second one for the sake of consistency, and everything is an Abysscraft card in your deck, so it's free reign as far as whatever you want to grab. Generally speaking though, you're probably going to play this card early on, and you're kind of looking for Sincere Soul to get your Masquerade Ghost and the whole deck going, so that's kind of your top priority, but grab whatever works best for you at the time ultimately. Next up is Liberté, Unchained Werewolf. Even though it's pronounced Liberté, I will probably just start pronouncing it Liberty because I'm American and not French. But anyways, she has a fanfare where you can bury another follower where her evo cost will cost 1 less for the turn, and she evolves for 2. However, obviously that cost goes down by 1, and on evolve you get to select an enemy follower on the field and deal 3 damage. However, if a follower was put from your field into the cemetery this turn, you get to deal 4 damage instead and draw a card. She's a more experimental card for this deck because burying another follower, you want to choose something that is relatively cheap, and ghosts are about as cheap of a card for the deck as possible, and her effects also are pretty good for some board control and a little bit of hand cycling, you know, with the 1 draw card effect. So overall, that doesn't seem that bad for ghosts, but I'm still not sure how well she will run in it though. Next up is Phantom Howl. It's a 3-cost spell that says you get to summon 4 ghost tokens. So really good late game. You play Masquerade Ghost, you evolve him, you play Phantom Howl, you get 4 ghost tokens, you get to hit your opponent for 4 damage, and then at the end of the turn when all the ghosts die, you'll get 4 Gargantuan ghost tokens. So overall, just always been a solid card for the ghost archetype. Even early game, you could play this to have 4 damage go between either the opponent or maybe a few engaged followers on your opponent's field. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. Even early game, this is not like the worst card to play in the world. Up next is essentially the meat and potatoes of the deck. It's Masquerade Ghost, his Evo, and Sincere Soul. He's a 4-cost 4/4 that says whenever a ghost is put onto the field, you have a +1 attack. He evolves for 1, and on evolve, he still retains the +1 attack for any ghost put onto the field, but also gets an effect that says whenever a ghost on your field leaves the field, you get to summon a Gargantuan ghost token. He also gains a last word effect where he goes back into the owner's EX area, and then you have Sincere Soul here that works well with Masquerade Ghost. It's a 4-cost spell that says you can search your deck for a Masquerade Ghost, summon him, and then shuffle your deck and give it ward. And then for 4 play points, if Sincere Soul's in the cemetery, you can banish it and pay 4 play points. And if you do, you get to summon a Sincere Masquerade Ghost from your evolved deck. Before we go over to look at Sincere Masquerade Ghost, I do want to mention with regular Masquerade Ghost that the +1 attack is only for the ghost tokens that literally just say ghost and Bakris Peppy Ghosty, because it is also considered quote-unquote ghost. But every other card with the word ghost in it doesn't count for the +1 attack. I only mention this because Sincere Masquerade Ghost is going to be a little different, but we'll get to that in just 1 second. Okay, so here's Sincere Masquerade Ghost. It's a 6-cost follower, even though that doesn't matter. I should specify it is an advanced follower, not just any kind of regular follower. But anyways, it has a fanfare where you get to summon 2 Gargantuan ghost tokens, and it has whenever another follower with quote ghost in its name is put onto your field, give it +1 attack and rush. So this is a little different than regular Masquerade Ghost because it is looking for the letters GHOST in its name, not just only the word ghost. So things like Gargantuan Ghost will also get the +1 attack and rush. Its last word says select a Masquerade Ghost in your EX area, put it onto your field engaged. And so it's kind of basically like Sincere Masquerade Ghost is like powering down back to its base form, engaged. And I just wanted to also throw out the Ghost and Gargantuan Ghost tokens because I mentioned them so much and I just haven't shown them on the screen yet. But there is also like keywords at the bottom of a lot of cards that summon the Ghost and Gargantuan Ghost that tell you exactly what they do anyways. But I also just wanted to visually show you what the Ghost and Gargantuan Ghost tokens look like. So yeah, with Sincere Masquerade Ghost, he's much more flexible on all the cards that get the +1 attack and rush. So even things like Ghost Rider or Bakris Peppy Ghosty get it, or Ghost Maid, they will all get the +1 attack and rush. And last but certainly not least is Colossal Grudge. It's kind of at the end here because it's one of the most expensive cards in the whole deck at 4. All the cards in this deck, generally speaking, are pretty low costed, especially with this only being 4. But anyways, Colossal Grudge is a spell that says it costs 3 less to play if there's a follower with Ghost in its name in your EX area. And that Ghost stipulation is, again, it's just looking for the GHOST. So again, like things like Ghost Maid or Ghost Rider or Gargantuan Ghost, if they're all in your EX area, they do count towards reducing Colossal Grudge. It does not only count just the Ghost tokens. But if you do play it, it does select an enemy follower on the field, deal 4 damage to it and 2 damage to the leader. In an optimal situation, Colossal Grudge, I'm pretty sure, is one of the most efficient damage dealing cards for 1 play point for 4 damage and 2 damage to its leader. So it's a pretty solid card for Ghosts in general for good board control and still pushing some damage. But yeah, that's the whole Ghost deck. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to comment, and I try to get to them as soon as possible, and I read all the comments, and we're getting pretty close to 100 subscribers, so if you could hit the subscribe and the bell if you want. I'm trying to get to 100 subs before the end of the year, and we're getting pretty close, so I think it's doable. We got about a month and a half, and I think I'm only short by like 10 subscribers, so yeah, if you're awesome, go ahead and hit subscribe, and thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great day. Bye.